because everybody's like, I want to stop. I want to change. How can I change this thing? And for us, what we've realized over the years was real change didn't actually start taking place until we had awareness even that we were in activation the majority of the time, that life was still crazy and chaotic and stressful. And in those moments, it's like, it's triage, right? It's just dealing with whatever is coming up in front of you first and foremost, taking a deep breath and going to the next thing and to the next thing and to the next thing. It's never the opportunity to actually pause and reflect. So how do we help people with that, Melissa?
I think the main thing is we have to do it when we're not struggling too. So when my son was 2, I started in every room of the house. I had a piece of paper on in all of the doorways that had 4 faces: happy, mad, sad, scared. I knew he was 2, so that's about the extent of it. Which most adults that I meet, that's about the extent of their vocabulary too. But every time every time we walked into a new room, or we would just be sitting there, I didn't wait until he was visibly scared, though I would do it then too, right? I didn't wait until he was actively mad. Every now and then I would just be like, how are you feeling? And he would point to one, maybe 2 of them, and some of them opposing ones. And I'd be like, okay, cool. It's this little getting to know you. This taking the pauses to check in. The problem is we want to read about these skills. We want to learn these skills, and then we're like, okay, when I need them, I'm going to call upon them. And it's the equivalent. I always say it's like if you came to me and said, how do I run a marathon? And I gave you all of these tips and you wrote them all down, and then you waited until race day to implement them. How's that going to go? Well, and then for us, we're also saying, and I want to stop doing this, this, and this. I want to take away my favorite coping skill. So it's like, okay, step up to that race and give me your running shoes and your favorite sports bra and your hair tie. Go. It's going to go horribly, right? So if we're like, I'm going to wait until I know that I'm dysregulated, I'm going to wait till I'm really, really anxious, or until I'm so shut down that I can't get out of bed, and then I'm going to practice these things. That's how it's going to feel. So we want to build them in almost as a way of living, not things to check off a box. So where can you implement them into your day to just ask yourself, like, just check in. What do I notice? That's all. Not analyzing it, not even trying to change it. Just what do I notice?
I love that.
Yeah, that is, I'm going to say that is the best metaphor. There's so much, like we talk about how important it is to practice when you're feeling good, when things are calm, when you're regulated. But that metaphor just brings it front and center, and such an easy way to see the why. Like it doesn't, sometimes you get that information, like you said, you're like, okay, here's all these things, but how do I apply it? Even maybe you don't know how to apply it other than showing up race day and being like, okay. And so seeing that, it makes so much sense when you can break it down that way. You also talk about, and I'm hoping you'll get into it a little bit, how whatever you do, whatever you don't do intentionally, you're usually doing something else unintentionally, something that you don't want. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, our brains are meaning making machines, and they do these patterns. So when we do something enough, it kind of carves out this pattern in our brain. And if we are not intentionally choosing how we're going to do it, we are unintentionally going to slide down that rut, right? So I always tell people, when you're trying, like another metaphor, when you're thinking of it, like being intentional, it often feels like imagine your brain, you step up to a doorway every second of the day. You step up to this doorway and you open the door, and there's 14 feet of snow. And you have this pathway that's like a bobsled luge that you could sit on your butt and just slide right down, right? Like emotional eating, I could sit on my butt and slide right down that bobsled luge, right? Dissociation, I can sit on my butt and slide right down that bobsled luge. Like, so if I don't step up to that doorway and get out a shovel and intentionally go down this new path, carving out this new path, I will unintentionally slide down that bobsled luge. So if I'm not intentionally saying, this is the way that I want to parent, right? I will unintentionally either repeat patterns that I witnessed, which I don't want to do, or I will unintentionally do the complete polar opposite of the patterns that I witnessed, which also don't work. I have to actively be choosing how do I want to use this shovel, right? When I sit down to eat, if I am not intentionally choosing, and I'm not saying like, oh, I want to make sure that I'm eating this perfect meal. I'm saying if I'm not intentionally sitting there saying I'm going to enjoy this meal, whatever it is, whether it's something that my brain is saying, this is bad to eat, right? I want to intentionally sit there and eat it. If not, I will unintentionally emotionally eat, right? Like I will shovel it in and not enjoy it and not even pay attention to it because for whatever reason, that is what that's the pattern that I carved out. So if I'm not intentionally choosing, and while I know in theory that can sound exhausting, I'm saying like pay attention all the time, I promise that it is no less exhausting than not doing it. So it's like, there's not, it's work either way.
Yeah, it's like choosing choosing your heart, right? Like do you want to be stuck in the anxiety and the stress of like emotional eating, right? I'm a big emotional eater. It's one of my earliest coping mechanisms. And so I constantly am in the negativity around, I'm either failing at it, or even if I'm succeeding at it for a week and let's say I'm eating right and doing well, it's still the stress and the chaos and the tension of how long can I hold on to this, or when is it going to slip up again, right? So you're right. I think it is a matter of like, it's hard no matter what, whichever way I go.
Well, I guess the thing that always, because again, I worked in the fitness industry for a while, and when I thought that I was being intentional, right? I thought that I was being intentional because I was living and slowly dying by this plan, right? This is what I have written down for the workout. This is what I have, written down for my food. Well, I cannot intentionally eat a week in advance. I cannot intentionally move a week in advance. And if I wake up that day a week later, I saw it. If I wake up a week later and I say, but this was on my plan, but my body is not feeling like that, and I do what's on that plan because that's what I planned a week in advance, right? That's not intentionally moving.
Ooh. Yeah, that's really clear. It's super simple. I love it.
I need a little help with that because it is really clear and it makes so much sense. And I think about how every time I don't stick to a plan, then instead of feeling like I'm intentional, I categorize that as, oh, look, you failed, you failure, you can't keep up with things. I turn it into a different perspective. How do we
different Bob said luge of shame and guilt and fuckery, and
there you go again.
that is what we are taught, right? Like that is diet culture in its essence, right? I'm going to set up this plan that no one can actually follow through sustainably, and then when it doesn't work, they feel like they're the failure. It's their fault, not mine. It wasn't me. We have been so consistently trained away from listening to ourselves that it has become normalized.
We were meant to be. We were meant to be. We were meant to be.